So yeah, it's on my side. So.
I feel really far over this way.
What happened?
No, I said I feel really far over this way.
Because you're only right there.
Yeah.
All right, so we
are just about ready. We're live with YouTube and the city's channel, so we'll kick off the meeting.
excellent, thank you, Eric. This is the May 3rd, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals and Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Jeff Webb, Calvin Yuji, Paula Summers, and myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the planning staff, Eric Schultz and Lee Batchelder. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct the meeting usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, the applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application. Open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application, or defer the application, deny or defer the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board. And three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good. The character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Sorry about being a little late. I'm not looking to see, but looks like nothing has been deferred.
That is correct.
All right, so our first item in this meeting will be A1, which is review of the minutes from the March 1st, 2023 meeting. Any questions, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right, so
I'll second.
motion for approval by Paula, seconded by Amanda. All in favor?
I'm in
Aye.
favor.
In favor, any opposed? Motion is approved. 5-0. Excellent. So our next item is going to be item A2, which is 1705 Ancient Oaks Lane, Johns Island, TMS 311-0000-296, zone RR-1. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one grand tree.
Okay, we're going to take a trip to Johns Island. This is the application that came in. And obviously April was deferred, but the city was also working with the applicant on a potential alternative design for the lot. Note that it's on a cul-de-sac. Note that the shape is a little unusual. In just a minute, you'll learn a little more about that particular lot. Note the aerial. You can't see the lot basically from the air, except for that lower left peekaboo at the existing grade there. I don't recall the Google imagery on this, what date it was, but you can tell that the majority of the trees on the site are live oaks. This is the proposed house for the lot. Note that there are essentially 8 grand trees on the property. And it just so happens one wasn't placed ideally for development. However, the city did, I've been dealing with this lot for many years before the applicant, I believe, purchased the lot. Numerous people sniffed around and was going to build their dream home on it. So I've been out there numerous times over the course of 10 years, probably. This is in the Rushland Plantation development off of River Road. So there is a group of trees, and we had the canopy surveyed, I think years ago, but also probably suggested for this owner to do the same. And I was trying to finagle a very custom house on this thing. It looked like a Y. If you could, it went in between the back porch, in between those 2 trees, and then, but to get a sizable square footage on there, you would probably had to have gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals zoning to seek a front setback, because there's a pocket of openness there, if you will, where the turnaround is for the driveway. But anyway, that's the lot. That's the tree. The application came in with this evaluation letter from National Directions, and tree number 6 is the tree in question, 32-inch live oak. They graded it C, and they did note dieback and appears to be declining. This was their map. Since that time, the applicant had hired Charleston tree experts to get a second opinion on the tree and do some further evaluations. And I have the 73-page report, and I forwarded it to you all as well. I could not upload the entire thing, but this is the title sheet and the table of contents. And then this is the evaluation here. Again, tree number 6, species of fungi, dieback, severe state of decline, and hollow trunk, and a grade F. The city disagrees with the grade F. When I went out to post the site for this meeting, I got up and close to the other trees, and I noticed some of the same fungi on those trees. I have some photos of that if you wanted to see the specific fungi. But anyway, it is a tree that is in decline. And another reason, not that I suggested that we defer, but we were just kind of going back and forth with the applicant, is that we were in the winter months, and I really wanted to see the tree break bud. And I have some photos that definitely show the dieback. So this is the thorough report here. It talks about sending those conchs off to the lab. I think it states that because they were pretty much like dead conchs, that it's kind of inconclusive as to exactly what they might be or not be, but where they were and more detail on evaluation. When I don't have instruments, I have a survey stake basically, and that's what I use to hit against the tree. I couldn't tell if the tree was hollow or not, but there's no obvious pocket of decay or hollowness. But so pictures from the report. You can see that it is. I think this is earlier in winter because it seems you'll see my photo is a little more flushed out, but it is in a state of decline here. I'm not an expert at all with fungi, but there's things lichens, and I don't know if that, I'll rely on the expert testimony of the arborist whether that's actually fungi or lichens. So city photos. This is my back is to the street, and you can see how that cluster of oaks on the right-hand side, the canopy really does stretch into the lot. And the tree is kind of centrally located there. This is, my back is to the neighboring property. This is the bit of grass that you can see from Google Street View, and the tree again is that tree just to the right. These are recent, so it's, the bud break occurred, or the spring flush. And it seems a little thicker in the winter picture, but you can tell that there is still dieback in the crown. So, having read the report, studying the lot again, the stakes were still out. I think we may do more harm if we tried to squeeze a house in and try and preserve this tree. So, with that said, staff is prepared to recommend approval. It's a Category 1 tree, 32 caliber inches of canopy trees on the lot. Obviously, you got a lot of canopy on the lot. We'll expect the landscape plan to be presented. If we can't get all 32 inches, we'll make a contribution to the city street tree program. Take the residual inches, divide that by 2.5, you come up with the number of trees times 295. Plus present a landscape plan for staff review and approval. And then obviously implement the CA, the Certified Arborist orders of tree preservation, and provide documentation that the orders have been completed.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. The applicant present. Would you like to be heard?
Sure.
Okay. State your name for the record, please.
Bill Spitz, the applicant, builder. I agree with Eric's assessment. I'd like for the staff to approve the removal. Only thing I noticed, Eric, I counted 9 grand trees on the lot,
Oh, is it 9?
and there's over 20 oaks on the lot. I would say, and Marcus here is the arborist, so you guys will hear from them, but I think we'll do a lot more damage to the healthy trees on the lot by preserving one severely declining tree. And then we'll go through the process of protecting the tree and healthy trees, following what Eric has recommended. So I would agree with his recommendation.
All right.
For the record, here's the full report, and it does get into how the other trees to be preserved would be protected and treated and so on and so forth.
Okay. Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? All right. Does anybody here have any direct questions of the applicant or the arborist? I'll close the application to the public. We'll just open it up to us as no one's opposed. So that's what we'll do. We'll close this application to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion. I'm going to say I think that I agree. The trees in decline. I think that there's, without asking for that variance to the front setback, and even then, that house shape that's there certainly doesn't fit where that driveway is forward to that front setback and preserve that tree. So you're still having to figure out redesign, working around it. And probably doesn't make much sense when you can preserve everything else on the perimeter. I would be supportive of the application.
Eric, what was the health on that giant 8-liter tree over there? Just curious.
So that is tree number 4. Original arborist B. And the second arborist agreed with B.
Monster.
I can't recall this, this was when the city saw this for the very first time, I can't recall if cows grazed on this island or not, but it was definitely a dove, field, and that tree obviously must have been competing with other trees, and it stretched out over into an open space. There's on the back side of the lot, there's like a ditch, and there's some remnant fence posts with barbed wire, so it was managed ag company, but anyway. And of course, it was competing with tree number 5 next to it.
Well, the pathology report says the mushrooms are unknown because the samples came in condition that weren't able to be analyzed. It did refer to potential polyspore fungus on more than one of the trees. But it's interesting because that tree is significantly, has much more dieback than all the other trees. I'm seeing a lot of trees around town like that have significant dieback amidst healthy ones. And it seems like, you know, they've made an effort to put the building in a location to protect the other trees.
The building, driveway, everything other than that.
It's a uniquely shaped lot
Located.
as well.
Trees, so maybe you would the way that drive will come in and turn around and everything seems to work.
You know, when they first filled these lots in, they could have done the damage to the tree back then.
There wasn't, this is a kind of unusual subdivision. A lot of it, was at grade, because they only did the roads, and they didn't really get into bulk grading or clearing of land, because it was all open and kind of pasture lands, like I noted. So I don't think there was much. There's some brick at the base of the tree, from maybe when it was, whatever, but I don't think they really got on this lot with equipment. That cul-de-sac was tight and we had it all cordoned off, at the time with tree protection and silt fence.
Any other questions? We have a motion we made.
I make a motion for approval with staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, motion for approval by Jeff, second by Paula. All in favor of the motion?
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? Motion is approved by Sarah. Thank you. All right, our next item, the item B3 is, yes, thank you, is 155 Meeting Street. TMS numbers 457-0802-011, 012, 111, and 112. Zone GBA. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 4 grand trees. Request a variance from section 54-327 to omit 15 protected trees per acre requirement.
So I apologize, I cut and paste, I forgot to change the TMS numbers on this slide. Either way, here we go, 155 Meeting Street, you can see it's got multiple ownership groups here. And this is the project that involves the closed Days Inn, which will just receive VAR approval last week, I believe, to be demolished and the site will be redeveloped. This is the grounds for a variance here. So interesting enough, you see 4 parcels. Correct me if I misspeak, but the Days Inn owns 2 parcels, and then there's 2 other ownership groups. And they have entered into ground leases with those groups to assemble this whole rectangular site, if you will. Zone GB, it's in the accommodations overlay. So it's moving forward to be redeveloped into a hotel with some residential units as well, restaurant and accessory uses. So the U-shaped building and the pool's already been filled in to the northwest there. The parking lots will disappear, and then the whole thing will creep to the west, if you will. This is a beautiful parking lot. I've heard Mayor Raleigh talk about this parking lot. So these trees were planted. This parking lot was developed, I don't know how many years ago, but they were probably planted as 2.5, 4-inch trees and have grown. And so the concept is to, this shows the 4 grand trees in blue and the protected trees in yellow. Blow up of that. So the grand trees are tree number 1, 4, 7, and 15. And the others are protected in size. So this is an overlay. I'll get into a little presentation the applicant sent for better understanding what's going to happen. But You'll have the, obviously the sense of arrival and the valet drop off of Meeting Street onto the alley. And then you'll have garage parking below and some, I think, above. And then they're going to set the buildings back off of the alley and provide a 10-foot sidewalk. There's no sidewalk there today. It's a very narrow two-way street. That's a requirement for the height. And then enhance a really nice pedestrian way that will tie into, drawing a blank on that other alley. What's the name of it? Fulton Lane, Fulton Alley. And you'll be able to traverse from King Street through Fulton Alley into this north-south pedestrian way, and then actually move through the project out to Meeting Street, where you can hang a right and walk down that pedestrian way and then get on the 10-foot sidewalk on the alley. So this is a floor plan of some of the programming that will occur. You'll have the restaurant out on Meeting, the different levels and towers of hotel and the courtyard. It's in TRC, but the basic footprint is pretty much as you see it. This is a graphic of, I guess, what sunlight will hit. So you'll have that wonderful pedestrian alley. And I might just point out, I don't know, there's some efforts to create a connection through to Charleston Place and further south down to the old, or actually to the Gibbs Museum. There's some things in the works that will create an interior block pedestrian way connection from Charleston Place to the Gibbs Museum. So this is the listing of all the trees and their size, their species, their grade, and comments and condition. So tree 1 is the one that sits in the southwest corner. It probably had the most soil volume and size. Tree 15 is in a parking lot island next to the pool. Tree 7 became very large. That whole island is just roots. It's just incredible how it's taken that much soil volume and grown the size that. I'll talk about that tree again. And then number 4 is grand, and it's up against the back wall of the Dave's Inn. So knowing my board, you tend to look at perimeter trees, right? So if we back up and look at tree number 15 or number 7, it's kind of on the perimeter. You may ask, well, can't they notch the building out and preserve that tree since it's got a root base in that confined area and what have you? But it really stretches quite far into the lot. The 28-foot limb extension just from the base of the tree to the very tip of that branch, and then 41 feet from the property line. So it would put a pretty substantial dent in the program for the building. So we have them look at that. These are the other non-grand trees. Again, I just put a G next to the grand. So the presentation that was sent, they wanted this added. I'll go through it and then the applicant can expand on it. But an aerial of the property boundaries, incorporating the parking lot to the west, existing views. Again, that two-way alley, very tight, no sidewalk. It's going to be a huge improvement for pedestrian flow east-west. That building will be backed off 10 feet. They're going to underground the power. This is the massing study, design principles. Garden court program, once again. So with that said, staff is recommending approval with 171.5 caliber inches. That incorporates both the grand trees at 100% and then the, I forget the exact number of protected trees. Obviously, there's going to be an opportunity to put some in the pedestrian way and in the courtyard, but they'll have a huge amount to be made in a contribution to the city street tree program and provide a landscape plan for staff to do approval. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, Eric, thank you. The applicant is present.
Good evening, I'm Trey Lenton with Forsberg Engineering. With me tonight is Steve Ramos, an architect who will talk about the building programming, James Wilson, and the arborist, Mike Russell with Natural Directions. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the project. I think Eric did a good job of summarizing the project. We did meet with him on site. We met with him at the city offices as well to discuss the trees in the parking lot and go over the different aspects of the project. A couple things I wanted to reiterate that Eric touched on. As far as the grounds for a variance, exceptional conditions that do not apply to other properties in the area. This is a large surface lot in a dense urban environment, and that is unusual. There are multiple parking garages adjacent to this property, and the new design will mirror other uses nearby. As for will the application of the ordinance unreasonably restrict property? Well, the site is located in the heart of the commercial and tourism district. The proposed development is a better use than surface parking lot. The city plan calls for more density along this area of the peninsula. The new plan is better use. As for the aspect of will the approval not cause detriment to public good? I think Eric kind of showed the schematics on the proposed pathways, the sidewalks. Along Meeting Street, we're gonna have a larger sidewalk than is currently there in front of the Days Inn. Along Holdback Alley, there's no sidewalk along that alley as it currently stands. We're gonna have a 10-foot sidewalk that will provide pedestrian connectivity. And in the western passageway that will connect the Fulton Lane, that is a public pedestrian connection that will ultimately, hopefully, connect to the Charleston Place on Market Street. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you. Anyone present like to be heard?
Yes. My name is Steve Ramos, and I'm one of the architects working on the project. Trey took on my speaking point, so I'm just gonna have to wing it. I actually live downtown and have two little kids. We really enjoy the downtown landscape. You know, we like going to Hampton Park, Moultrie Playground, White Point Gardens, and we don't ever go to parking lots to enjoy the landscape. But since I started working on this project, I started parking in this parking lot, and it is a lovely parking lot. And when you park there, you do get to appreciate the trees. But that was never a long-term plan. The parking lot is owned by multiple groups. And I think these trees occurred over time as a result of being planted in a parking lot. And the design that we're proposed is going to have a much farther public benefit than these existing trees do. And Eric, if you could just move up through the slides, I'll just briefly talk to that.
Your presentation?
Yeah, yes, please. Keep going forward. There's like a rendered, actually that's a good slide. So, you know, there is going to be a large amount of open space on this project. As Trey mentioned, we're moving the building back about 4 feet on Meeting Street to create a larger pedestrian sidewalk. Pearlback Alley does not have a sidewalk. There will be a 10-foot sidewalk with bluestone and street trees. And then we are creating this really wonderful alley on the western side behind the King Street buildings, all of which will be publicly enjoyed landscapes, much farther than the existing parking lot. And if you could go to the next slide. The connections that this project are going to foster both around the perimeter, as well as you're going to have the ability to walk through the site and through the building to Fulton Lane, is going to be another great benefit that this project is going to offer. Next slide. This section through the building with King Street on the left, Meeting Street on the right, and that concept of actually traversing through the site. You'll also notice that there is parking underground. Pretty much the entire parcel, we're parking cars underground. That way we can maximize the amount of active use at the street for restaurants and retail. That is not a cheap thing to do, but that underground parking really makes it almost impossible to preserve these trees. These are large trees. To make underground parking, it involves driving what are called sheet piles around the perimeter of the building. They go down sometimes 80 feet into the ground. So, and all of that is done, I think, to create a much better project. The city has defined that the plan is for density to occur between King and Meeting Street. And so this is the spine of the peninsula where density has been designed to occur. And furthermore, this is the heart of the city. We're right by Market Street, Market King and Meeting. And so everybody we've talked to believes that the highest and best use is a mixed use development. And nobody's mentioned the trees. Next slide. And again, this is a ground level plan, again, with the new widened sidewalk on Meeting to the right, the new sidewalk on Hurlbeck, which will have street trees that, there's no sidewalk now, and then that new alley along the western facade that is going to be a really kind of special and unique piece of the design. I'll also say that alley, although it's kind of organic in nature, it has been designed also to respond to the buildings on King Street. The Fulton Lane Inn, the King's Courtyard Inn both have entrances along that alley. So being good neighbors, we're kind of crafting that so that it is a mutually kind of enjoyed space. Next slide. And these are just some renderings that show the design intent of the building, but it also shows the enhancements at the street level, both Meeting Street and Hurlbeck Alley. Next slide. And this is Hurlbeck Alley again, where we currently do not have a sidewalk. Next slide. This is along that western alley. There's going to be a fountain at the end of Fulton Lane. There's going to be a covered kind of galleria space. Again, all of which can be traversed by the general public. So I think that as we made this request today, I think the key thing here is that what we're providing is by far going to be a greater public benefit, not just in the building, but in terms of literally landscape that we're putting back will be substantial. Trey spoke well to the variance test, but I would just like to iterate the uniqueness of this property, and the variance test talks greatly to that. I mean, we've already talked about the size of this and the fact that it evolved over time. When I look back at the old Sanborn maps, at the turn of the century, this site was densely populated. And around the 50s, some auto repair shops started to move in, and you saw buildings start to be demolished. And then in the 70s, the Days Inn was built, and then eventually the parking lot came in the 80s. So it has evolved over time, and I feel like this is the next evolution of the site, and one that is it's just going to be a win-win. Lastly, the authorization of this variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. We've been working on this design for over a year. We've talked to the mayor, to Lee, to Eric, to Torrey Parish, to Morgan Gunther, the French Quarter neighborhood, Charleston Village, Ansonboro. We've talked to the condo owners that are across Hurlbeck Lane, the Fulton Lane Inn owners, the King's Courtyard Inn, the Meeting Street Inn, all the folks that would have some impact by this. And people are excited about this development, and nobody has voiced concern to the removal of those trees. So thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you.
And for the record, you got the email from Christina that there was no written comments submitted via the Innovate site.
Anybody else present that wants to speak on behalf of the application?
Yes, James has one more point there.
Apologize. James Wilson with 101 Dickinson, and I'm part of the applicant team. I just wanted to just pick up on Steve's good point about the history of this site. It's been an urban site with a mix of uses over time, and for a chunk of time in the mid-1800s was automotive facilities and fair places. When that the basement got built in the 70s, I guess, or early 70s, and then what happened to this site is that the city actually leased from different owners mid-lot, and to create this parking lot, and the old structures were removed, and the city basically leased it for over 40 years. And the point I would just make is that the idea with the city, the lease to the city for the city to run a public parking lot was not really to sort of turn it into a park permanently. It was a limited term for lease. And these trees, of course, grew up during that time, and nobody was thinking back in 1980, oh, let's make sure not to let any trees grow up while the city is leasing the property. But my point is that the lease was not supposed to convert it from commercial urban use to something else. The history of how it's all. And we'd be glad to answer the questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anybody else present wants to speak in favor of the application? Oh, no, you already had your time. Yeah, you sit back down.
Grabbing my notes.
Anybody present opposed? All right, we'll close this application to the public and go to the board.
Actually, all those interior parking, because there was this one, there's one further out. There were several that were designed in behind the buildings on King Street specifically to allow for parking for the King Street stores, because we didn't have parking garages and whatnot. And this was either designed by Robert Marvin or Ken Simmons, the senior. I guess what my problem is the ordinance needs to change or something, because it's ridiculous that we are constantly having to review projects like this where we're taking out perfectly healthy trees for development. That, I understand that the city has the plan. I get it. I get the desire for the density. Our job is to protect the trees technically, and it's an issue. And it's constantly coming up. And I think it's, somewhat unfair to the board to, you're given something that's a done deal. It's not right.
I agree on that. Eric, could you go back to one of the very first slides?
Very first
One
slide.
of the very first slide, maybe the third slide, and then
I parked here when I first moved here.
sorry. Let's go one more. All right, so then, so the parking lot that's left here,
Yes.
that just remains coming off of here and.
Yeah, so we had a meeting after our initial TRC pre-app with our legal team and their team, and they have to fix it. They have to not have it at dead end. The angled parking, it just won't work, right? So there's some different landowners there. The city does own this piece, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, James, but this is a city-owned parcel here. This is under different ownership, and this is under different ownership. So yeah, that's it's in the works.
Question for the applicant, the public space, is the plan for there to be easements to commit that as open to the public? And that's all the green space that was shown on there?
Yes, that's correct. It'll be a requirement of the approvals that that space be an open public space for public pedestrian access.
So if I could ask one question off topic, but the number of parking spaces being removed and then what's provided, because those parking spaces are for the general public use. And then what's provided underground, is that gonna accommodate everything? Because it sure didn't, I mean, it looked like it's one level underground. And I can't imagine that that footprint would accommodate the spaces for the hotel use, the residential use, the retail use. And again, that's not my purview, it's just, it'd be
It's a
good to
great
know.
question. So, there's 200 plus parking spaces underground that are specific for the hotel and the residences on the site. There's also gonna be some above grade parking as well that is effectively designed to replace about 65 to 70 cars that are currently on that surface lot.
Okay, do you have a graphic of where that occurs?
If you go to the site plan as part of this application. Right there, so, you see there's actually two parking entrances. This entrance goes to the underground deck, and that's for all of the folks utilizing this building. And then this ramp here, that's for the above grade parking, it's basically above the upper floors right here.
Got it, okay.
No affordable housing, I'm sure.
What's that?
No affordable housing component, correct?
No, ma'am, not within the building, but there is, of course, a required contribution for any hotel to,
Yeah.
I mean, to Amanda's point, it's not fair to bring these types of applications to us because clearly this is a better use of the property than what's there, in my opinion. I mean, I think as far as the design goes and providing pedestrian access, you know, I've walked down that alley. I'd much rather have a sidewalk with trees.
You can't get the whole way because the historic building at the corner still has a sidewalk that's that big. Right?
So
So it gives some flow towards meeting more than it does to gang.
it did receive BAR conceptual approval or
Demo.
review or
They
demo?
are demolition
Just demolition,
for
so
the
the building.
existing days in.
I'll talk out of order. We've been through planning commission with this.
It was in the paper this morning.
Well, yeah, I would say that, I think it certainly would be a significant improvement to the area. I don't know that I buy 100% the hardships, because I think that it's use driven versus site driven. So you could say, I'm so sorry, you could say that, hey, we're just gonna take a days ends thing and potentially find something to build up there and not impact these others, but those other lots weren't, the intended use certainly wasn't for parking lot perpetuity. So I'd be supportive of the application. There's no opposition to it. Stays in favor. Do you have any other questions?
I think it's an improvement to the area and part of what we're trying to accomplish in town and. Yeah, right,
It's not our job.
right.
I'm abstaining.
Does anybody have any other comments? Questions? Is someone ready to make a motion?
How much of the mitigation do you think they can get on site here?
That's a good question for Steve, I guess. I don't know if you have your landscape architect on board
Thought
yet.
about it.
We do have a landscape architect on board, but that calculation I cannot speak to. I know we are providing.
Because that may not be that many canopy trees in those alleys. That might be some gray
They're not gonna
myrtles
fit
or
them.
palmettos or something, yeah.
They can't put a canopy tree like a live oak in there. And palm trees, you know, are grass, so they're not providing the same biological functions.
I'm not a tree expert, but with talks with Jason Cronenberg, he recommended pistache trees on sidewalks. I don't know if those are canopy trees.
They're non-native, smaller canopy trees.
They can't double dip. They have to provide the 2.5.
Yep.
If they up it to a 4-inch, then they get an 1.5 inch credit toward mitigation, but that's to be determined by parks what they'll accept.
But most likely the lot's going in the tree bank.
It's like $21,000. If everything had to go to the tree. Maybe get one of those Wentworth outright gas. But,
Amanda, to speak to your point, we're launching our ordinance rewrite, so there's going to be, please, I want all of you to attend those meetings. And we'll address trees, the whole gamut, but I get it, I understand where you're coming from.
Because I think in particular, tree number 1
the land and everything.
is a very nice tree. And frankly, there's no reason to remove it. If you had been thinking that way from the beginning. Spending the year thinking about designing with it rather than against it. And that is my point. Over and over again.
All right, we're up to 3. There's no other questions. So I'm gonna make a motion.
We're gonna go back to the historic.
I'm not making it because I'm just gonna stand up, but I hear you too. I make a motion for approval with staff recommendations. Leave it at that.
All right, so there's a motion for approval with conditions. Is there a second? Second by Calvin. Motion by Jeff, second by Calvin. We'll do individual. So start with Calvin. I in favor.
I am in favor.
I in favor. All in favor. Amanda.
I abstain.
Abstain. Joel. I in favor. So it'll be approved for 0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. All right, so our next item on the agenda is item B1. B1 is 345 Folly Road, James Island, the TMS 424-0000-023, Zone LB. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 protected tree.
This is the application. Little description of their continued. Site is on Folly Road. It's on the west side. The now closed Subway store. So they'll be backing up to apartments, but there's a cross-access easement and drive on the western boundary. As you can see here, the Subway had limited parking. It had a little grass or large grass area with 4 tables out there and the drive-through. I don't know how long it's been vacant, quite a few months now. So you like cheeseburgers and ice cream, because I believe it's Dairy Queen is coming, and they want to expand the drive-through lane by providing an escape lane and providing more queuing area, not put cars into that common access easement, but have an island that separates additional parking for their inside patron use area, small addition, and then outdoor patron use area. So we have a southern magnolia and then a protected sweet gum. This is a blow up.
Which is the magnolia, Eric?
Magnolia is tree 02, so in the angled parking.
Yep.
So, it's a double leader. It's got, you can see in just a moment, a large seam of included bark. It does get pruned, side pruned by the utility for that pole with the transformers on it. But it likes its space right now. Here's the included bark. It's really a deep seam. So I'm worried as it may get larger, if it were to continue to grow, that may split eventually, especially if it continues to get lopsided on one side due to the utility pruning. The gum tree is a gum tree and it has a cavity in the base. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 34 caliber inches of native canopy trees on site, must provide a landscape plan, and then backing up to the existing conditions. The applicant's wanting to maintain that curb line, but I would like it to shift to the south to provide a full 5-foot strip and work with Dominion Energy to put appropriate understory trees under the line, replace the trees that are getting cut in half that are basically on the property boundary.
Thank you, Eric. Applicant's present.
Matt Klein, Engineering 49 Integration Street, Charleston. Eric, can you pull up the site plan for us? So, Eric, and since our TRC pre-app and through other conversations, we've been working with stormwater. This will fall into their redevelopment ordinance, which is the 20% reduction in stormwater. That's a bigger deal on projects like this that are redeveloped going through TRC than just about anything else on the site, just because the magnitude of the required infrastructure redevelopment to accommodate that ordinance with the including pavers and pervious materials. So the redevelopment of the site to improve it requires that whether we do whatever we do. Remote, it's a reduction of 20%. Or you can do other things, but in this site specifically for this, our opinion is that that is one of the better ways to achieve that ordinance, to approach that ordinance. That said, Eric, to your point on the comment on curb lines, that we have already addressed that specific request that the curb lines move to be full 5 foot on both north and south, planned north and south parking, because all of that parking will be removed and replaced with pervious pavers to achieve that 20% reduction in the asphalt, current asphalt. That said, the pavers will end up coming somewhere in this vicinity, right through here and back. So while the gum tree is the special exception, the magnolia tree is what we have been concerned about, and the magnolia tree specifically, in my experience, and this is, thank goodness mine came back, but in my experience, I've killed a magnolia tree in my yard before because we've replaced sod. So like, if you clip a root on a magnolia, it doesn't work really well. Unfortunately, they're just not very tolerant. It's not a very tolerant species of tree to deal with redevelopment. But the required infrastructure improvements to the site, keeping the circulation and sheer numbers of people that travel Folly Road from the time that this was developed to current need additional parking and the tenant requirement for additional parking. This is, we worked through several different layout scenarios, but this is the layout that we came, a similar layout, as discussed with the changes here with the curb line, inclusion of all pervious pavers for the majority of the site now, and, you know, and just the circulation improvements. So with that, I just wanted to say that the comments from staff we would accept those. We are keeping, there are several trees on this site that are our property line trees that we're not trying to remove. And there is a crepe myrtle cluster that is in the front corner of the subway currently that would be redone such that we would have some shade trees as a request of the DRB there in the front. So that said, I'm happy to answer any questions, but
Thank you. Anybody else present would like to speak in favor of the application? Anybody present that is opposed? Close this application to the public. Board for discussion. So I'll just ask the first question. And that, sorry, if you go back to that site plan, that area where it says concrete, picnic area, concrete, like what's planned for in that area? Is that for landscape and grass? Okay. And then the outdoor eating is what those four squares going around.
so the principal in the front corner, so you'll see the shaded, these shaded areas. These are site walls, DRB site walls.
Okay.
This is a kind of an included sitting wall to help protect the patrons as well as the decoration. Sit in these ice cream I believe the intention is to put sable palms in those 4 spots.
So the big area where it says concrete, you say is gonna be grass, is that part of your stormwater?
The big area that says
This,
concrete-
if this whole area is grass,
Yes, ma'am, that is, unfortunately, that is the survey coming through, that is not site, not layer managed, that is not concrete. The intention is for that to be grass.
But is that part of your 20% requirement, or is 20% just gonna be in that parking lot?
So in order to get to 20%, every impervious is not, I think the intention here is to have concrete sidewalks. Because the concrete sidewalks prove to be better in future use for ADA. As well as concrete ADA spaces. So the intention is to provide concrete for pedestrian and ADA to improve ADA. Everything else from here back is demoed and come back as pavers. So we had, again, the original intention, the reason why this line is here is because the rest of this was supposed to be pavers. But when you get into the ordinance and you understand what's going to be required, you have to take all of this concrete. This is all going to be pavers, all of that, all the way back. So yeah, all of the existing concrete that's there will be outside of that building, except for the driveway intentional. About a 10-foot offset of existing Poly Road.
but can't that grassy area be planted more heavily and help you account for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you will have there will be a landscape plan, it will have DRB, and currently, if I'm not mistaken, this, correct me if I'm not wrong, but I think that exhibit was done and submitted prior to the landscape plan for the DRB submittal that we put together, but there were 4 canopy trees, I believe, in the DRB submittal that went through in that specific area for an, increased shade and those things.
I don't see how you could work around that magnolia, even if
I was gonna,
you'd have to make the driveway do something weird, and then you're taking away the open space.
well, the driveway goes by it now, doesn't it?
It currently does,
Yeah.
but that's not the route for the drive-through and elevation of that.
So that alignment right there, it's shifting closer.
Egress.
Right, but isn't that where it's,
Drive-through comes through here. So
that's just back to gravel back there or something?
This is all concrete.
It's concrete or asphalt, yeah.
So the intention here is to add staging because of the drive-through.
Yeah.
The actual, this is gonna have a significant use that will need a staging, not dissimilar from a Starbucks or something along those lines.
Well, where I was kind of gonna go is, do you consider seeking a variance from a parking space or two versus the tree? You know,
So heard what you said, and my experience again with the level of infrastructure that we're gonna have to be putting into the digging and the way that magnolias have surface roots, and you clip a root, my opinion and was that if you kept the tree, you could probably go to within 5 feet of this existing asphalt line within real excavation, which removes kind of down to here. And once you go to here, once you offset all of this back over to here, you don't have the radius to get around. And that was what we looked at.
You looked at it already. Yeah, the moral of the story is don't plant magnolia trees
I love the
in
magnolia.
places where you're gonna have vehicles.
So putting that tree in an island would kill it. Potentially.
You're gonna subject it to more heat,
Stress,
stress.
because they have surface roots. Any magnolia you see, the roots are very knobby.
All right, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Do we have a motion? City's recommendations for approval with,
Oh, I have a quick question. So the protected tree, the sweet gum,
It's not grand, it's just a protected tree, 5 inches. That's it.
but I thought sweet gums weren't on the
Not
list
great.
anymore.
They're not grand, but it's a protected tree.
It still is on the protected
They're
list.
under the 15 trees
Okay.
per acre.
Yeah, just for quantity.
all right,
I'll make a motion for approval with staff recommendations.
all right, motion for approval by Jeff, is there a second on that motion?
I'll second. You can.
Calvin's going to get a second on that. All in favor, aye in favor?
I in favor.
Any opposed? Approved. Thank you.
Yes.
All right,
Welcome.
that concludes
Matt.
the
Matt,